We often hear marketers talk about how vital their work is to sales. What we don't hear nearly as often is the reverse, how essential sales is to a well-functioning marketing team. Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show for data-based marketers. If marketing creates the content, sales provides the context. And that context is what makes campaigns relevant, credible, and grounded in the real world. Sales teams feed marketing the on-the-ground truth if they're asked. What prospects are actually saying, how they react to new pricing, and how they interpret a company's positioning. That's especially clear when a business serving the SMB market tries to move upmarket. Sales hears almost immediately how enterprise buyers perceive the brand, revealing the gaps that marketers must close if that company's going to compete at that level. It's a live feedback loop that marketers can't get anywhere else. Bridging those gaps requires real collaboration, though. Sitting in on each other's meetings for beginners, sharing insights early, recognizing that both functions are cogs in the same revenue engine. And their shared job, sales and marketing, is to keep that engine running smoothly. Our guest today understands this better than most. He's a fractional leader of revenue and go-to-market teams and host of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where leaders drop the script and speak candidly about what it really takes to build growth teams. He's known for diagnosing the true cause of weak team performance, something he knows well from playing intervarsity sports. He gets frontline performers going again too, using a coach's tone to get them back on track. And he doesn't restrict this just to his day job. This Southwestern Ontario native spends his weekends behind the bench as a minor hockey coach. Let's go now to talk with Karl Ortmanns. Karl Ortmanns, welcome to Funnel Reboot.
Thank you very much for having me, Glenn. It's great to see you, and thanks for having me as a guest.
I'm really glad to. And Karl, we've known each other for some time now. The thing that I've always talked about with you, because it's an area that you know extremely well, is sales. You've been part of revenue organizations, must be 20 years now. And I'm interested in knowing what kind of things would you like to say to a person who doesn't do sales day in, day out, to try and typify what it's like to be in sales?
If you're looking into the world of sales, know that you're about to get on a roller coaster, and there's a beginning and end, because you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, you're going to have the corkscrew and like what is going on. But ultimately, know there's a beginning and there's an end, and there's a cyclicality to everything. But the other thing that I would say, if you're thinking about going into sales, think of it as I'm a problem solver. And if you take a mentality of I'm going to solve a problem, because that's really what at the end of the day is. You have a solution. You can say it's a product, but you ultimately have a solution. And that solution has been designed to help somebody. And so if you think about it like, okay, our solution is going to help solve somebody else's problems. And if you could be obsessed with how do I solve that problem, that is one of the things that I think is the most fun of the world of sales. You ask lots of questions, you try to figure it out, and ultimately, hey, does this help or not? And if it does, amazing, and you carry on. If it doesn't, be okay with saying, you know what, Glenn, as much as I would love for you to use our product, it's not going to help you, and be comfortable with that. Because at the end of the day, reputation is a big thing, but also how do you solve that problem for somebody, and helping somebody solve a problem is what we're ultimately trying to do.
For sure. So now let's turn inward and let's talk a bit about the nature of the relationship between the person doing that sales and marketing. So these two folks have basically the same mission, but they're executing on different ends of the mission or different segments of the journey. Yeah. So what would you say, and I don't want you to hold back here, are some of the main things that a salesperson has that they like or don't like about working alongside marketing to try and do that thing you just said?
See, maybe I'm a bad guess for this one because I'm a believer of whoever my marketing partner is my best friend. We have to be best friends and we have to be arm in arm because if not, then we're going to be looking at different things. Going through CRO school with Pavilion, there was Andrea Kale was a CMO at the time. She's now a CRO. But there was something she said that I think that I hold pretty true. If you're only looking at it from a marketing perspective of, look, we generated these number of MQLs, we can push over any number of MQLs and be like, look, we're winning. And then you look at the next room and the sales team and you go, oh, they're losing. Why are they
Long
losing?
faces.
So she says, like, in marketing at times we celebrate that we generated a number of MQLs. But in the reality, the goal is revenue and the goal is bookings and revenue. And so to me, I think that there's a very first thing that I look at is like, how closely can I be with my marketing partner or the marketing teams to ensure that we understand? There's a good example of like marketing a lot of times is content, sales is context. And so that bridging of gaps is really important because if you understand the market, right? That was actually one of the things that showcased, and I don't remember who said it now. So whoever said it, I apologize. I can't remember, but I remember the thing. And it was take the ing out of the word for marketing. Actually, I think it was Latane, and she was the CMO of Six Sense. She said in the roles, you don't have a chief executive officer or a chief revenue, you have a chief marketing. And so what her comment was take the ing out of the word and understand the market. And so when you understand the market and the people and all those different things, then you understand what people are going to need. So you understand the world. And then the sales side is the context. And so having the ability to push that context back to say, hey, Glenn, we just ran this campaign, but these are what people are actually saying. These are the people we're talking to, and this is how it's coming to be. Oh, the teams that I've seen where they're so misaligned, guess what? They miss numbers.
Which should be incentive enough for them to figure that out. When you look at the market, then we know they're both looking at the same thing, the same point on the horizon. It might be that the marketers are taking them collectively, right, in aggregate. Sales are taking them individually, but it's all the same. So if we roll up to something I know you've spent a lot of your career doing, and that is managing, leading these teams, the issues there get pretty complex pretty quick. I would say the main thing that we have to be mindful of is whoever is leading sales, marketing, even if they roll up to a chief revenue officer who's looking after both, that's not the top of the pyramid. There are folks above them in the C-suite and board who need revenue, and they're expecting it, and they're expecting it no matter what. So we've got a bit of a situation on our hands where it's great that they want that, but back to that word market, markets shift, competitors shift, all sorts of external things shift. And we've got to admit that those in charge of that revenue number are not allowed to say, I didn't make my number just because of those external shifts. So, like, maybe you could give me an example of one of the times when you remember there being a shift happening. There we go, shift happens, but that you knew that the organization had to still deliver.
So I think there's a few things. Look at where we are right now. When you try to look at the world of sales and marketing and this new thing that is now hitting, it's AI. Look at just how things have changed in such a short period of time. You now have the problem statement of my website traffic is down. Hey, people are finding out about us in places that I can't influence anymore. You can, but you can't buy your
It's
way
all
there,
different.
right? Like you have to just go and figure it out. Here's the LLM models, and these are the things they're looking for. And people are doing different searches today versus what they were before. You're not using the Googles, and Google changed the way things happen with being able to surface your information before you even have to go to the website. So there's a shift, there's a dynamic shift that's happened right now. And it's hard. Today, it's really hard because you have all of these different tools that are showcasing in such a short period of time. And so, more now than ever, it's really hard. There's a couple of things that come to mind. There was this thing that happened in 2019, early 2020. Do you remember what that one was?
Maybe had something to do with some global health event.
Maybe there was something there, right? So when you go back to that and say, okay, what happened? The world changed overnight. And so this was a time where I was in a much more traditional sale, right? So I was working in manufacturing automation.
Right.
I spent majority of my time in software as a service, and doing this, right? Virtual selling was something that I became comfortable with. But when you join an organization that has traditionally been that face to face, I go, I see you. Oh, you want to meet with me? You do it on my terms and you do it in my location. That all changed overnight. And so, how do you then go, what do we do now? There's no more, I'm going to leave some things behind. Now you have to transition everything to say, we have to be digital first. And how do we do that? How do we actually run through a funnel and capture people's attention when we've not traditionally done this? We're not going to trade shows right now. How do we capture it? And how do we? So at that time, like I was responsible to lead the marketing and sales and sort of the revenue team. And
Yes.
so that was a point where it was like, okay, I had a background of, okay, I understood how to do digital marketing and I understood how to do these things. So we ran some demand gen campaigns, actually helped to launch Pardot with some. So there was a point where I was like, I understood how to do this and I had a clue of how to do it. Then on the sales side, I had sales team members that have never done it before. They've held conference calls, but they've not done face to face. They're
Yeah.
not used to being on camera. There was a lot of changes that had to happen. Okay, now we have to rely on this type of information because you can't just go visit somebody. It's not a thing anymore. You have
Right.
to rely. So there was a dynamic shift. I need to go digital first versus being in person first. That was a change. Okay, now that I go digital first versus in person first, how do I translate the information? How do I prospect? There's a funny story that I think I've told on a podcast, but I had one rep on our team who spent 20 something years in this industry, knew all of the people, had great relationships. And now we were bringing a product to market and we were doing it in a virtual way where he had to prospect. And so he's like, but I can't do it at scale. So he was writing emails, like physically typing emails, typing. So I said, hey, look, I know how to fix this. So I brought in outreach. So I trained the team on outreach. And before we got outreach going, he would send these war and peace level emails. Like they were so much into it. And he wasn't getting the responses that he thought he would because, oh, it's my name. People know my name. So I said, okay, let's just take a look at the email and let's objectively talk about it. And he looked at it and goes, so what's wrong with it? And I looked at him, I said, what's your next move? And he sat back in his chair, looked at me, and was like, what do you mean? I'm like, but what's your next move? So you sent this really long email. You gave them everything. What's next? And it was silence, right? Oh,
Yeah.
crap. Anyways, fast forward, we bring outreach in. And now he's prospecting on a scale that he's never done this before. And he ended up calling me and he was so mad. And I was trying to hold my laughter in because first he was like, he held his mouse up to me and he was yelling at me. And I just broke my mouse and my finger's sore. Are you kidding? What are we? And I laughed and I said, hey, here's the funny part of this. You're complaining that you're having to click a button to make some prospecting emails, but you're not typing everything up and you're getting more an outcome. And so you're upset that you broke your mouse because you're now getting a higher level of volume and output. And he
Right.
looked at me, he goes, I'm done. And he just like, and it was more of a, okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm upset in the moment. So, anyways, I knew there was a shift that had to happen. And so it is going from traditional to digital. And I think that's a challenge for some because now how do you bring a technology in? Hey, I have specific standards and I want to launch a marketing automation platform. How do I do that? I got to tie it into my CRM. How do I do that? And who's got the content and where does it come from? And we have to, hey, let's update our website and let's change this and put
Right.
videos and all these different things that came to play. And it was like, what am I doing? That was a big shift that had to happen. And so that was one that I immediately think to answer your question. Is the market ready? So there's also another component to think about. And I remember actually sitting in the executive room and saying, what is it going to take for us to be enterprise? And my question to the team was, are we ready?
So you were
Well,
selling into an SMB kind of tier.
it was much more SMB mid-market. Like that's where the bread and butter, there was a product-led component to it. And it was like, how do we get to the enterprise? And it was a question. I said, are we ready? There's two questions. Are we ready? And is the product ready? Because there's two different things.
Right.
Plus, is the market ready for us? And so there's a bit of a market feasibility to go, where does it play? And you have to do your TAM, SAM, SOM and figure all that out. But as we're going, and then the comment was like, what do you mean? I said, if you're going to be enterprise ready, we got to make sure that SOC 2 is there. Are we ISO 27001? Okay, great. If we're going to sell into specific countries, what are those countries? Do we need to have
Right.
specific documentation to align?
You're going to hit an avalanche of these right away if you start reaching into that size of account.
Yeah. And then the other question is, hey, can the product support this new influx? Can we onboard 2,000 people at one time? Are
Right.
we ready? Hey, is our positioning and our product positioning there? We got to think about how are we going to handle RFPs? We're going to need to have a security officer and a legal person. And so there's more to it than just go up market, right? Just because you sign an enterprise logo does not mean you're enterprise. If we just call it what it is, you get one, you go, oh, that's really good. I really like that. But how do I get more of them? That's where you have to start to look at the market. Where is the market? Do we solve it? You might say, hey, look, we've sold into healthcare as an example. Now we want to go to enterprise healthcare. What do you think some of those first questions, you've done this lots of times. As an example, Glenn, advice, hey, we want to go into enterprise. And you go, great. What are the first things you think those enterprise healthcare companies are going to ask?
Oh, you're gonna get hit with HIPAA. You're gonna get asked with a lot of questions about meeting different standards.
Yeah. So now, what if you don't have those? That whole market is totally out of play.
Yep.
But in order to get there into that enterprise, we've got to do something a little bit different. So we've got to now make sure we have these standards because if we're not ready, it's not going to help. I had Brandon Redlinger on my podcast, and actually he talked about a similar type story. They won Google as a customer, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to their business.
Why?
They weren't ready for Google. They
Yeah.
couldn't onboard them. They didn't get the product up. The best thing that happened to them is they put their logo on the website and said, look, we have Google as a customer. And then they churned. But they weren't ready as a customer and the product wasn't ready for them. So all I'm saying this is sometimes you need to understand the market that you're playing in and the opportunity, but also the product that you're selling, does it translate to the segment? And then also once you get into the segment, is there a different pricing scheme? How do we do that? Is it the same people that you want to sell a small business to an enterprise? Now you're going to have different skill sets. You're
Yeah.
going to need different types of content. You're going to need to target them differently. Hey, ABM is going to come into play when we do this full marketing campaign. When we go to those enterprise versus an SMB, you don't need to do a full ABM. You're doing more. So there's a different connection point, and this is where that relationship, I'll go back to it of like why it's so important to have the relationship with marketing and be like, look, this is what I see. Oh, interesting. How do they come together? How do we solve that one thing together?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the sales folks, because what they do, they want to quickly find tactics and then get into high velocity use of those tactics. I think one thing sales needs to marketing should understand about them is that compared to marketing, who is used to tracking the same metrics over a period of time, you gave examples where a sales rep had to go from measuring in-person conversations, trade show discussions, and leads collected to slamming the button on their mouse or using outreach and typing out emails. The metrics by which you would judge sales effectiveness have changed dramatically in just that one change. And that's one of many that's happened even since 2020. What would you suggest we do to try and make sure that this kind of kinetic activity that sales has to do and that has to be measured can still fit with the gear of marketing when the marketing gear seems to move more slowly relatively to sales?
Yeah, the thing with marketing is it's a lagging indicator. So right out of the gate, there's a lagging indicator. I launch a campaign today. I don't see the outcome until the end of it, which is whatever, 3, 4 months.
And pray for management's patience on that.
You have to, right? You've got to start to think about how do I build the funnel for the future? How do I build these things together? So I think there's also what I'm a big believer of is marketing should be in the sales meeting and sales should be in the marketing meeting. It doesn't, you don't have to have a voice, but just listen and hear what's going on. Because if I understand the types of things you're working on and I go, oh, hey, Glenn, I was in your marketing meeting. I heard you talk about these things. And this is some of the insights that I've heard from our team on the
Yep.
sales side and the customer calls and et cetera. This is what the funnel is sounding. Oh, interesting. Hey, Carl, I heard the sales team talking about these things, and there's an opportunity for us to give you this level of information that's missing. Great. I can do that for you. So that connection point is something that I think is needed to be focused on. And if you're able to do that in a way where you have that openness and that communication, it's just putting together one team because revenue is one team. It's not separate teams. You have separate teams that are doing other components to it, but you're using your cogs and wheels. The engine doesn't run on one thing. It's a collection of things to make the whole engine run.
Very well put. Hope that marketers, whether it be if there happen to be ride-alongs or at least listening to maybe recordings of calls, that they are catching those fast changes which sales will be seeing. And the hope is that where a few of them are noticed together, marketing will pick up on that trend and then work in a huddle to try and come up with ways that they can help sales capitalize on that trend. Are there times when you have seen these changes work well to turn the ship around, where maybe revenue was falling, a market was cratering, a price change was, there was tremendous pressure to do a price change? When have you seen these snatching victory out of the jaws of defeat moments happen? And what do you think marketers can do to be part of those?
Lots of things that they can be part of it. If you go back to the market, let's just talk about the market and having that due diligence, because there's a component of who's looking at the market to translate and who's looking at the competitive landscape, et cetera. And a lot of times that competitive intelligence sits inside of marketing. A lot of times it's in marketing. So there is something right there that we got to encourage those teams to think about. On the other side, I don't want to say it was faltering, but there was an opportunity, it was a missed opportunity. There was a price that was listed, and it was like, okay, when was the last time the price was updated? We updated it 4 years ago. Okay, what's changed in the last 4 years? Oh, we've done all of these different things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look. Oh, there's a churn of a certain product. This product actually has a renewal rate of 58%. How come? Let's look at the market. So then I did some due diligence to look at the market and go, actually, we're not priced properly. We're undervalued for what we do. Put together a pricing suggestion, and here we go. We got a pricing now upgrade where we said, hey, we're going to push to here and we're going to try it and go. And guess what? It improved. Marketing, how did we work with marketing? Hey, marketing, this is what we're seeing from the market. These are the things that, are the challenges. How can you help? Okay, let's look at these things. Okay, here's how and you do a bit of a scatter plot and go, these are the competitors, this is where we fit, and this is where we sit. Oh, hey, our other competitors is a 10x us, and we deliver 20x the value. Okay, then we're underpriced. But we
Yep.
don't forget your core values, but take a look at your market and go, is it right? Hey, Carl, we want to put this price up, but you know what? This market that we're over here in, it's not going to go because it's for whatever reason. So we've got to change some things. And
Yeah.
so having that connection point to say, hey, look, there's an opportunity for us to go and improve our positioning, because that's another part. Just when you increase your pricing, you also have to increase your positioning. And what does your positioning look like?
Yeah.
And what are you telling the world that exists? Hey, look, I know you bought us for simple math. You bought us for $4,000 last year. Well, do you know what? We're now a $50,000 product, but we're only going to charge you $7,000. There's a dynamic shift of what that happens. A $4,000 product to a $7,000 product, what goes into it? And how do you now take all of that evolution and all of that technological improvements and all of the innovation and showcase what the new version of that is? That's where marketing comes into play, and that's
Yeah.
where positioning, and that's where all of that comes in. Where on the sales side, we can start to include all of those key components and say, here's how they're connected. And how does marketing come into play? Be a partner, be a bridge together, be together as part of it, because one or the other isn't going to be it, in my opinion. You've got to make sure you're connected. The second thing is pay attention to the things that you're hearing in the sales side and pay attention to the things you're hearing in the marketing side. Hey, look, there's a whole new market that's launching. We don't know how to solve it. We think that there's something there, but we don't know what to do. Oh, on the sales side, here's what we do. I have one rep that is so passionate about that one thing. Why don't we adjust the quota for this period of time? We'll give them all of those leads and we'll test that market.
Or let's say that rep is renowned for that one product line, and we want to experiment to see how we could get the rest of the team selling to their level. You've got that opportunity to try new positioning. Try this different pricing on a couple of RFP responses or proposals you're sending in. We can contain that little experiment, see whether or not it works, and then figure this out. This is an area where boatloads of data could be available to marketing if they just tapped into it.
Right. Yeah, and some of it too is looking at the churn, and there's also a relationship between customer success or account manager, whatever the term you want to
part
use,
of it too,
right?
or product management for that matter.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. If you have a product-led component to it, hey, what's our monthly active user base look like? Is it growing or not? Or as they call it, the MAU. The MAU isn't where we really want it to be. Okay, what can we do differently? Maybe we change the journey. Maybe we start to add some different components to that product-led so we get a higher renewal or improvement or acquisition rate. The flip side is like, hey, you know what? We're struggling. We're seeing a churn rate. What's going on the churn side? How do we address it, etc.?
Absolutely. Let's pan up for a minute to management. You have done this role, and where there's other pieces, there's other elements that must be considered for a company to keep revenue intact and grow it. I want you to give marketing folks a glimpse into what has to be done to resource a sales team and what kinds of players you may consider having, what kind of comp plans you may consider putting them on, and how you got to factor in cash flow, how you got to factor in the cost that it's going to take on profitability if you decide you're going to raise the amount of commission for the reps or base that you're going to do because you need to attract a different kind of rep. Give us a little bit of that world so that marketers can truly get a sense of how they can be an attentive partner, how they can understand and maybe not work in that world, but at least empathize.
I'm either going to be your worst guest ever or one that people actually enjoy. Revenue is a team sport. It's not an individual. I might be responsible for the outcome of that number, but it's a collective union of the leadership team that we have to translate into one. We're looking at one number.
So what I'm hearing is marketing is in it whether they like it or not.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, if you look at your P&L, it's the top of the page and the bottom of the page. Ins and out. The rest of it in the middle is just details. When you go to the board, how much did we raise? How much did we make? And what was our outcome? It's effectively that. And so when you look at the details, that's where it needs to come into play. If you're in the executive team and you sit down and you say, all right, we want to really push, we're going to hire 20 new reps this year. Okay, first question, have we done that before? Have we ever hired 20 in a year? Okay, so now there's an enablement component. Who's gonna one, hire them? Who's gonna onboard them? Are they going to chase the same market, same segment, new vertical? Like, where is that going to be? I need to work hand in hand with marketing. And then the other thing is, as I'm going through this hiring plan and saying, I could hire them tomorrow, but based on our sales cycle, so based on our onboarding, it's going to take them 2 months to even get into the flow and be ready for customer conversations. Hey, and by the way, we have a 6-month sales cycle. So now you're at 8 months before anything even happens. So there's a component here that I think you got to really pay attention to. And so as you're looking at that, okay, great. We want to make a big push here. The outcome we want to do is we want to grow. So we're going to hire salespeople because they have to handle the conversations. Great. Guess what? HR, you're now on the hook. For every time we miss a hiring, it comes back to revenue because we missed the hiring window. Now, all of a sudden, that 8-month window has shifted and it's
Hmm.
shifted. Hey, marketing, can we ensure that we have enough for them to work on? Doing account selection, etc. Great.
Can't just keep kicking the can down the road. Yeah.
No, hey, now RevOps is going to come into play with that. Okay, now we got to work with HR and finance to say, hey, here's what the comp plan is going to look like. We're going to make sure we have enough for them to work on. It's going to be an adjusted, and here are the things we're going to do. Hey, product, where do you want us to, what is it going to look like? Oh, we're going to launch into a new vertical with this new product. Okay, great. How are we going to do that? How are we going to look at it? So I guess I'm maybe giving such a bad answer here, but that revenue number is owned by everybody. It's not just one.
Yeah. I think for folks who have not been privy to those conversations, how they've probably thought of it is from a very fishbowl uh, view where they've gone, I put in to get another FTE in marketing to help, and when I didn't get it. When they hear all of what you have just described, I hope they understand a bit more of why they didn't get it, or how next time they want to structure their ask to try to factor in some of what you've just said.
Yeah, it's a great call out because as you add another headcount, what is the output we expect?
That's the way to frame it.
Right. And so from a salesperson, the output we expect in year one, based on their ramp, will only get 6 months of potential productivity. So we're going to base their number, divide it by, et cetera. Here's your outcome. Okay, from a marketer, what's the output we expect? We expect them produce this output. How's it going to translate? Because like you say, at the end of the day, it's top of the page, bottom of the page, and we're just the details that we got to solve.
Or better yet, marketing is listening to that ramp going, but wait a minute, I could be creating demand, collecting some early suspects, and dripping on them with some marketing automation that allows me to begin feeding that rep when they arrive with a steady stream of people to make their ramp shorter. So if you can push it through a model that says, I do more at the time when it matters most, my ask is probably going to be approved.
Test, have a hypothesis, run your hypothesis. Did it work or not? Do we have to iterate or do we have to kill it? Sometimes there's an iteration. Sometimes you got to say, you know what? We thought that there was a market here in Iceland. And by the way, by our due diligence, it said, and it doesn't. So we probably shouldn't go down that path. And that's okay. But this is the thing with growth. You've got to try new things. How do we try it? We run a controlled experiment. That controlled experiment drives an outcome. It drives insights for us to make better decisions.
And I suppose that conversation isn't complete before we also acknowledge that where you were talking about inputs and outputs, the final output is profitability. And so we should always be mindful that if the revenue targets are met, but the profitability targets aren't met, areas like cost are going to be in the limelight and on the chopping block. So our job isn't finished when we have hit the top line number.
Right. And revenue per head count is a really interesting metric that we're seeing more and more now, right? And when you start to look at your entire org, hey, is it where we want it to be? Sometimes when you're going to be scaling, you're going to have to take a hit, but it's for a calculated risk. Consider those things as you're going through it. But like I say, sales and marketing has to be a partnership. And sales, marketing, HR, finance, it's all connected because you can't do one without the other.
If you're a marketer and you are not familiar with things like internal rate of return, go talk to your finance person and hear what they say when you ask. But if it took us 1 quarter longer to do what we've proposed with the investment that we want, what's the impact on finance? And finance would say, oh my goodness, that makes all the difference in the world. We're now going from being in the red to being in the black. Sorry, from being in the black to being in the red on our IRR. And so based on that, finance would recommend not doing it.
And finance is going to give you the details, right? So they're a really great resource to try to help you minimize the risk and just give you the inputs. Hey, here's what it's going to look like. This is a good decision. Hey, you know what? The business case does not support it. Maybe not a good idea. But like I say, there's a relationship inside that. And when you're at the leadership level, your first team is the most important team. Make sure you're all aligned, because if your first team is all aligned, the outcome is going to be what you expect, and you're going to be focused on the same things, not trying to operate in different silos.
Karl, when we have a team like that, it's a simple fact of probabilities that at some point or other, team members are going to leave. And that in sales in particular, those sales leaders have a fairly high turnover, probably higher than marketing leader turnover. So do you have any advice for us on how revenue as a function should behave when you're in those transition times, when you have some rockiness in leadership positions, when maybe the reason for the person to be exited was because sales objectives weren't met? You've been through those nail-biting times. What can you tell us about what we should be doing to keep our head up?
The length of tenure for a CRO, I think, has shrunk to 12 months now. It might actually be sitting somewhere between 12 and 14, but the length of tenure for a CRO or a CMO is like 30 months. So there's very different. The CRO or sales leader is judged on a number. Did you deliver the number? Yes or no? Remove the verses and put an and symbol. Sales and marketing, because it has to be a union. When you do have a new leader, if you're a marketer, get to know the salesperson or the sales leader quickly. Hey, how do you think? What are the things you look at? What do you see? Ask questions. Be open and curious, more so than anything. If you're a new sales leader, don't go in thinking you know everything. Hey, marketing, I'm new at the helm here. What are the types of things you've learned? What are the types of situations you're running? What are the campaigns? What are the best supporting ones? What are you noticing? What have we missed? Be curious about each other's world, because if you are curious, you're going to find a solution. And I think that's one of the challenges. We go in with this closed mindset versus, oh, I don't know your world really well. Oh, I didn't realize that we're doing incredibly well in a segment, in a vertical, in a location. Can we double down on it? Can we go faster there? Huh, interesting. Oh, I didn't realize. So is it hard? Yes. It's hard to be a new leader because you come in and like everybody's looking at you like, okay, you're supposed to be the person. Humility and transparency are two beautiful things. I don't know everything, and that's okay, but I'm going to tell you what I do know. I'm going to be open and tell you what I can tell you. And by those two actions, which I'm a firm believer in, do I think I'm the best at anything? I don't. There's always somebody better, faster, stronger, smarter, all these different things. Humility, if you lean on it, don't go in. That's a confidence versus cockiness. It's a very fine line. If you're confident in your skill set and you have a humility about what you're trying to do, work with your marketing partner and have them tell you the things that are going on in their world. Where are they challenged? Where are they struggling? You might find a whole new world that you can tackle together. And again, come together pretty quickly, because at the end of the day, those two functions are required for success.
I would just re-emphasize the part you said, being transparent. And I would say to marketers, please don't be judgmental. If you hear what you perceive as cockiness, please look at it through the lens of how little time this person has in the CRO chair to deliver, and understand that what might come across to you as them being clipped is a reality of the quick cycle time that they are given, and that it is usually shorter than anything you're used to. And so if they say things to you like, we're blowing up the status quo, we're going to go after a completely new area, or we are going to risk cannibalizing our old product line with this new product, and it's got to deliver on these numbers. My advice would be try to be open-minded about that and understand that they are speaking from a place of urgency. They don't have the luxury of letting the market come around to seeing things their way. They are trying to be an active force, and you should be, as you've said, getting on board with that. You're in the team, you're on the field with them.
Yeah, I agree. And so create that relationship early, know that you have a period of time, right? So you have an onboarding time, and then it's what have you done for me lately in the sales world. That's why I say it's sales and it's not sales versus. If you remove the versus, create that relationship, good things will happen.
I really think you've said some things today that should help marketers take a new approach and possibly get better results for themselves and for the revenue function as a whole because of how they understand sales. So thanks very much, Karl, for giving us that insight. If people want to reach out to you and find out what you do and where you do it, where can they go?
I appreciate you having me on your podcast. How this started, I actually had Glenn on my podcast, Revenue Problem Solvers. So that's on a few different platforms, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, if you want to take a look at Revenue Problem Solvers. And the whole goal there is to talk about the challenges that people have faced and how did they succeed. It all came out of a conversation of somebody asked a question, everybody answered it. And I was like, where does that lesson learn happen outside of this room? I asked similar questions, and like you and I talked about, I think our topic was creating a spin out from a brand. And that was an interesting insight, right? The other one is LinkedIn. So it's just LinkedIn, Karl Ortmanns, and be great to help if I can.
We'll link to both in the show notes. Karl, thanks again so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me, Glenn.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.